Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today's guests are Jack and Jill Johnson. They're co-founders of the Franchise Insiders. Jack, Jill, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Great to be here.
All right, so we got a lot to talk about today. So I definitely want to get into what you're doing over at the Franchise Insiders, and specifically getting into trends that you're seeing. You've been in the business for a long time, and definitely experts in the field. But before we get into that, I like to start this episode the way that we start them all, with what we like to call our Mission Matters Minute. So Jack and Jill, at Mission Matters, our aim and our goal is to amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's what we do. What mission matters to you?
Well, we are franchise owners helping future franchise owners.
What that means is that when people come to the Franchise Insiders looking to explore franchise ownership, they're going to work only with consultants who have been franchise owners or who currently are franchise owners, which means they're going to get the inside scoop on what it's really like to grow and scale a franchise. And, for so many people out there who are looking into becoming business owners, that kind of transparency is totally unmatched in our industry.
Now, just to get us kicked off here, how long have you been in the franchise niche or business? How long has it been around?
So I started my journey in franchise ownership full-time in 2008 with a company called Home Care Assistance, which was a home health care franchise, which I helped scale. And of course, Jill helped me to scale it from one location to hundreds of locations in a private equity exit in 2015.
Wow. And taking us back to 2008. So for those, a little history lesson for those, that was the housing crisis. There was the markets were doing bad. I mean, that was a tough period in the market overall. I'm just curious, what led you to that point in 2008 to kind of going down that path?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And I, like so many other people, was laid off in 2008. I lost my corporate job and I found franchising. I found this sort of young and growing franchise called Home Care Assistance. And as it turns out, senior care, the need for home health care, it doesn't matter what's going on in the economy.
Yeah.
If your mom is struggling with dementia, she needs a caregiver. And so it felt like first of all, a business that finally I could help. We could do something more than just make money, but help people and truly work in a business that is very much recession resistant.
And looking at the choice, like at that point in time, a lot of people were looking for what's next, whether they were going to, go out, look for another job, they were going to start a business. I feel like this is a debate, and I know that I don't feel there's a right answer either way, but franchising versus starting a new concept yourself. I mean, we might as well just break open that conversation now. Like you could have went a lot of different directions. So you personally, why did you think franchising matched what was going to be right for you outside of the business itself? Like, because you could have also thought about, hey, are you going to start your own concept from scratch? What made it something that was attractive to you to go the franchising route?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think for those who really want to paint outside of the lines, franchise ownership may not be right for them. Franchise ownership is all about structure. And we often say to people who are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs, if they're willing to look at this from a very sort of step-by-step process, let's say a 5 to 10 year journey, starting with a franchise, learning the systems that help people succeed. There's a great book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, and it talks about the systemization of a business, and that's what a franchise does. And so even for those of you out there that have more of, say, a Steve Jobs mindset or an Elon Musk mindset where you want to create something, starting with a franchise can give you that foundation for one day finding a business and then turning it into a franchise. So I think there's pluses and minuses, but I think you can kind of have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah, for me, I'm just personally a huge fan of franchising, the franchise model. I think especially for first time entrepreneurs like that. I'm not saying it's any easier, by the way, just because like you still have to work, you still have to make the business operate. Just because you're joining a particular concept does not guarantee success. In theory, it should increase the possibility of you having success because you have support, you have a model, you have maybe something that obviously has worked in other locations. Can you speak a little bit about that? Just kind of like the nuts and bolts, because I don't want to assume that we've all heard the terms, franchise, franchising. But if you're listening to this show, you have. But if you've never actually kind of looked under the hood of what that actually entails, maybe kind of shed some light on that.
Sure. So franchising is a great way to, get your feet wet and really get into becoming a business owner without all of it on your shoulders. So, like you said, it's not simple. It's not the easy way out by any means, but anyone that's looking to, become a business owner or take matters into their own hands, franchising is great because you have that support, you have that backbone, you have a blueprint. You have a support team cheering you on the back. So you're not in it alone. You have people alongside of you, but you also do have the control and the feeling of owning your own business. So it's such a wonderful way to get into that, escape corporate life, and do something that you really want to do that, you can put a stamp on it. But you have a cheering squad and you have people that want you to succeed because your success is their success. So it's just a wonderful way to really get into business ownership without, the scariness of doing it all on your own.
Yeah. What types of individuals have you found are a good fit for becoming franchise owners? Like, is there any different? Like, is there a certain background or walk of life or corporate experience or just in general entrepreneur experience? Like, who's usually a good fit for?
That's a really good question. And, we've helped over 600 people become franchise owners over the years,
Wow.
all different backgrounds.
Congrats. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. Go ahead.
And it's so, it's like I was texting with a client this morning who's about ready to sell his franchise that he bought 2 years ago. And I can't share the number here on this format because of FTC regulations, but let's just say he's very happy. And that's an example of someone who came to us. He's 29 years old. He didn't have a lot of corporate experience.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that played into his favor because most franchises, they don't want you to come from a similar background. They want to teach you their ways from the ground up. And, I think, though, ultimately what you want is someone that is a networker, that's willing to work hard. The people that have the most trouble in franchising are the ones that are looking for more passive assets. That doesn't exist in franchise ownership. Franchise owners make the difference. And I'll give you an example. I was just looking at the Crumble cookie. Everybody loves Crumble, right? It's a great tasting franchise. And if you look at their numbers versus any other cookie franchise, they are far and away better. But interestingly enough, in their latest franchise disclosure document, which all franchises have, and needs to be renewed every year. In their item 19, which shows the financial performance of the franchisees, they show the average franchisee net to be about $250,000 approximately, whereas the median is closer to $75,000.
Wow.
So the reason I bring this up is that Crumble's a great brand, but clearly that tells you that there are operational efficiencies and some franchisees are better at it than others. And so it really always does. Even with the best franchise brands, we want to find the right fit because it does ultimately come down to the franchise owner.
Yeah. And speaking of Crumble or just in general, like different niches are different franchise opportunities. So that's another, I think, misconception. A lot of times people think that it has to be franchise has to be associated with food because we think about McDonald's, we think about all these other franchises that, you can't drive down the street and not see them, right? Maybe give a little bit of a view of just the overall landscapes and the type of opportunities because it doesn't always have to be food.
No, that's a great question. We just had it recently with a client here in Florida. There is some seasonality here in Florida where we have, people who come and they live here October through May. And so this particular client had about, let's say 150, 200K to invest in a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to get you a brick and mortar,
Yeah.
McDonald's franchise, which requires 2 to 3 million. But we also wanted to be mindful of the trends here in Florida. And so what we found for him was a pool maintenance franchise where you can put clients, even if they're not in town, you can put them on a subscription, and it's easy enough for the technician to get access to the backyard. So that means all of his efforts in building up a client list, even for those that are going to leave for the summer, those pools still need to be cleaned every single week. So while it's not a sexy business, it's a business that's absolutely needed. And by the way, it also can take on commercial accounts like hotels. So as franchise consultants, Jill and I work with over 500 different franchises, and we actually have our clients take a personality assessment that's given to successful franchisees across hundreds of franchises. So we can show them where they compare to high performers, which is how we find things like pool maintenance franchises.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about your process. Actually, that's a good point. So meaning how it actually works to work with you. So you just mentioned an assessment. Walk me through. I'm a brand new person. I call you. I'm like, hey, I saw you in this amazing interview on Mission Matters. Jack, Jill, how can you help me? Like what happens next?
Sure. So I think the first thing to realize is that it doesn't cost anything to work with us.
Great point.
So our services are 100% free. Like a realtor, we'll make a commission based on a placement. So if someone does buy a franchise, the franchisor will compensate us. So our services are free. So can't hurt to work with us. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand. It doesn't cost anything. And we're here to really give you that advice and the guidance. When people call us, it starts with a phone call. We, talk to them a little bit about what they're interested in, what their goals are, what their financial situation is. And then, as Jack said, they take the profile, which you can talk about.
Well, and what's so nice is too, when our clients join us on an initial Google Meet call, which kind of looks like what we're doing now, we'll usually have at least a couple of our other consultants on the line too, because what we want is to get their perspective as well, and just sort of listen and share and give our clients an idea of what this is really like. So first, it is, like Jill said, having that initial phone call, learning about what someone wants to accomplish, sharing with them what franchise ownership is like, what it's like to scale a franchise. And then two, having them take these assessments to sort of build a profile on them. And unlike, 99% of the other consultants that are out there, we don't then just come back with a list of franchises. We come back with a recommendation report where we say, look, based upon our conversation, based upon the assessments that you took, here's the categories we think you should look at. Here's where we think you can excel as a franchise owner. Maybe this is the area where you should hire. And here's some spots you might want to stay away from. It's like we spoke to a client the other day. He really doesn't want to work with highly skilled labor. And what that means is someone that it's harder to find, right? Because they have to have a certain certificate. Yeah. And so we identified for him that it might actually be better to look at a subcontractor model where you're actually hiring these other specialists who already have a license. You're paying them as a contractor. You don't have to worry about W-2s and things like that. And you can just focus on sales. So that's what's so cool, is that there's so many different types of franchises. And we look to first really personalize the fit for them, and then show them the franchises that fit. Because if you just lead off by saying to someone, hey, you should own a restoration business, they're probably going to say that sounds like a terrible idea.
Right.
There's got to be some education that goes through that, right? Like, and to understand.
100%. And I think us, with having the experience that we have, we're really only recommending trusted brands that we work with. And so there's that, there's that reassurance that what we're presenting to our clients are very well-known, successful, established franchisors. When you do a franchise search on your own without using franchise consultants like us, you don't know what you're looking at. And sometimes, as we talked about earlier, you get kind of caught up with the, sexiness or the shiny objects and what looks great. But you really want to look at what is good for you. What are your goals? What's your financial status? What are you ultimately looking to do? And that's where we come in to give you those recommendations based on what you specifically would like to accomplish.
Yeah. Go further into that vetting process and what that looks like for you to decide who gets to be on your platform, who gets to be in your list of potential recommendations.
Yeah, and if I could just add a quick caveat,
Please.
right after that first phone call, we actually arm our clients with 3 very powerful contacts. 1 for franchise financing,
Mm-hmm.
2 from a CPA standpoint. You want to have a strong financial partner who understands franchising, who understands helping you. What type of corporation should you set up? What things do you need to understand when it comes to getting equipment for your business, and how can you maximize keeping more money and making sure you're staying compliant from a taxation standpoint, as well as also connecting them to a franchise attorney who can later review franchise documents. Look, you always want to have strong financial partners, and you also want to have a good attorney in your Rolodex at all times. So we arm our clients with those things from day one. Like Jill said, we don't charge for it. When you ask about how do we keep our clients sort of focused on great franchises, great people. We've been in the business a long time. We are connected to most of these sort of top people in this industry. And franchising, while there are probably 3,000 different franchises out there, it's a really small world. So we know who the good guys are. We know who the bad guys are. And franchising does a great job of policing itself and getting the bad guys out. I mean, all you have to do is go onto LinkedIn and you will see it. Franchising is very much about what we call responsible franchising, and making sure that people understand that when you invest in a franchise, you're the one that has to make sure that it's a success, meaning that you have to work the business, you have to be committed to the systems. And if you can do that, the right franchisor will do things like have weekly conference calls to show all the locations, how you compare revenue-wise, total transparency. You want to be armed with this because it does a couple of things. One, it motivates you. Like, we don't like to lose to other franchises, but it's great to see other franchisees out there thriving, and we can then pick their brains about what's working. So the best franchises are transparent, and they have layers and layers of support for franchisees. That's the number one thing. If it's, just the founder and his brother that are, handling support, run away from that franchise.
Yeah. Switching focus here slightly, for the franchisee to know whether you're going to be a good fit, like what are some of the reasons why maybe it hasn't worked out for a franchisee? Like what's kind of the other side of it? It's always good when everything works well, but what happens when it doesn't?
Yeah, and it doesn't always work. I mean, franchising, Jill has always made this great analogy in that it's a lot like a classroom. You have A students, B students, and C students. And I think that's one of the nice things about franchising is that if you are a C student and you'd like to sell your franchise, there's probably an A student franchise that would like to buy it from you. And it's also puts franchisees into a great position for scaling. A lot of times clients of ours, they want to buy 10 franchises from the jump. And we say, don't do that. There will be opportunity, because you're right. Not everyone succeeds with franchising. If we can establish a good rapport with our clients and we can be communicating on a monthly basis, we can help them avoid some of those pitfalls. But yeah, what I've seen happen when franchising hasn't worked out, honestly, the franchisee isn't following through on what they're supposed to, whether it is marketing or networking. You can't just buy a franchise, turn on the Google ads, and everything's going to work. You have to go out there and work the game plan. But it's not going to come out of the blue. A good franchise is going to be doing weekly blood pressure checks with you to see how you're growing, to show you how you're comparing to your cohorts. So honestly, I'm not just trying to punt this to the franchisee, but it is the truth that with the right franchise, you get so much data. If you're not going in the right direction, you're going to know it. You're going to get plenty of warnings to make a decision to either fix it or sell it.
And I do like that point that you bring up, though, is that it feels like there's more of a tangible asset because there's a built-in market of maybe other franchisees that would be willing to take it off your hands if at the end of the day you weren't willing, it wasn't working for whatever reason, or maybe your interest changed, or you want to be in another niche or whatever it is. Versus when you, even small business owners that start something from scratch that is actually working, it doesn't mean that there's a built-in market to take that off your hands when you go to retire or succession or things like that, because it's not necessarily part of a model of where other individuals are willing to take on that risk because they already understand the product and the delivery and the systems involved. Am I off on that? Am I understanding that correctly?
No, you're exactly right. And if you go to list a business on Biz Buy Sell, your prospective buyers are going to be more P&L focused. Whereas if you go to your local network of franchisees and you say, I'm going to sell my business, those are more brand champions, right? They love the brand. They're not going to be as focused on the P&L, because I guarantee you that crumble owner that's netting 250, if she has an opportunity to buy the crumble owner that's netting
She'll
75,
do it in a heartbeat.
and she knows she can fix it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I see that. So there's a built-in market for liquidity to a certain point, for sure.
You know, there's all kinds of ways to structure a deal too. And we have to look at this from two sides, because, you know, I look at it with the home care assistance example. If you have a healthcare franchise with a, let's face it, a need that's not going away anytime soon. And, you know, let's take, for example, Senior Helpers, a very proven, you know, home healthcare franchise. In their item 19 of their FDD, they show the average franchisee that's been open 60 months or more grossing $1.4 million. You can look that up in their franchise disclosure document. That is a tremendous average. And so those franchises are going to be easier to sell. They've got a longer runway. And what's interesting too is that it's not just private buyers anymore when it comes to franchising. If there's a franchisee that has, say, multiple units and can show a net profit of $1 million or more, that brings in things like small family funds and even private equity itself. So again, there's lots of different ways to build and scale and sell a franchise.
Talk a little bit more about the actual process. So after you've chosen a franchise, you've already gone through your initial process, all the assessments are done, everything's good, and you're kind of at that, let's just call it that marriage stage, and you're ready to get hitched to that franchise. You're ready to put down some money, that paper. What happens next, and what kind of timeline are we looking at to actually, get to the point of acquiring?
Do you remember when we had to wire our money to buy the Pink's franchise?
Sure do.
Do tell.
You know, you're writing a big check. It's like when we bought our first house, we were scared.
Yeah. It's scary, but again, you've done your due diligence. You've talked to those, franchisors. You've talked to franchisees. You've done the discovery calls. You've done everything. So you really should be at a point, besides, sending the money over and, not knowing what's ahead of you. But it's also a very exciting time. And so, the whole process from the beginning to the end can be 3 to 6 months. Sometimes longer, depending on the process. So, but at that point, you're ready to go. You're excited. You most likely are going to jump in with a couple new franchisees and do some trainings together. So, like anything, it's a big step, but it's a very, very exciting time. And just knowing you have that support and you have people behind you, it just makes all the difference. It's not as scary as opening up your own shop on your own and hoping people are going to walk through the door. You have a path, you have a guide. And so it's a really exciting time.
But here's what most people don't know about working with a franchise consultant, especially with us at the Franchise Insiders who have done this, who've walked in the path. Last weekend, we told a client not to move forward with a franchise when he was ready to do it. And the reason is that we took a last second sort of gut check on the territory. And probably it's a conversation I should have had with that client about a month earlier, but for whatever reason, we learned that a good portion of his territory would require him to drive an hour. And I just said, I don't like that fit for you. I think you should pull back and look. The franchisor, they're friends of ours, and they, of course, they want to bring on a new franchise owner. Our client was ready to get started. We've already been working on this since December. But sometimes you need to take a step back. And so we advised him, take a step back. Let's reassess. Let's find another company that has a better territory. And already we've found him a similar company where he can have his pick of the territories. We've done a territory analysis for him, showing him the 2 that we would recommend. And actually, this franchisor does turns out has a financing program where instead of having to write the check for 60 grand on day one, he pays $1,000 a month. So sometimes things work in a favorable way for the franchisee if we take our time and if we don't rush.
Exactly.
And I think that's where working with established franchise consultants, and I don't mean to turn this into a commercial, but this is for all of you thinking about working with a consultant. When you work with consultants like Jill and I, who have been in the business a long time and have an established business, we are not depending on someone to buy a franchise to stay alive. Our business has, we're here, we've got, so the point is that you want to value experience and someone that's been in the business a long time and can help you navigate it accordingly.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Jack, Jill, this has been great having you on the show today. I just, final question. I mean, what's next? What's next for you? What's next for the business? Like, what's on the horizon?
Well, I think one thing that's really exciting is we've started to add to our team. So the Franchise Insiders is growing. And so we have a few consultants that have started with us. They're also franchise owners. So that is, a big part of our business is franchise owners helping future franchise owners. So we're expanding, which is really exciting. They're a wonderful team. We're just looking forward to, just growing the business and, bringing on more people,
teaching them to, it's interesting, right? Because as we started out, the initial excitement of being consultants, like I'll never forget when we first started Franchise Insiders and we placed this ad in Southwest Airlines and we had to commit to a year and we were spending $8,000 a month. And for the first 6 months, we didn't make a dime.
No.
And eventually the business, grew and succeeded. And so what we love is we're able to mentor other franchise consultants in the same methodology that has been so successful for us and has blessed us with this wonderful life of helping other people become business owners. So no, this is our mission. Franchise Insiders are going to continue to scale and add on great consultants and help people do this the right way. Franchise owners helping future franchise owners.
And how do people follow up? How do they learn more? And is there any content they can follow or anything else? Like, how do people follow up?
Great question. Okay, well, first, you can go to thefranchiseinsiders.com. You can text 305-710-0050. Or if you're not ready for a conversation, check out our podcast. It's called We Bought a Franchise. It's available wherever you might stream a podcast. It's called We Bought a Franchise. It's also on YouTube, where we talk about our experiences as franchise owners. We also interview franchise owners. So it is just a wealth of information for anyone just thinking about or considering franchise ownership.
Amazing. And for everybody watching or listening to this, we'll definitely put those links in the show notes. So you can just click on the links and head right on over and check out the website and also the podcast. Definitely go check that out. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day, we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Jack, Jill, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.